video brought back so many emotions for me, tied to a deeply personal story. Years ago, I had a conversation with one of my subscribers about abandoned animals, and it stirred memories from a chapter of my life I'll never forget. Many years ago, I lived in Detroit in a poor neighborhood. The rentals were cheaper there, which helped since I was starting a new life in a new country. What broke my heart daily were the abandoned animals everywhere: kittens, puppies, older cats, and dogs. So many of them. I wanted to rescue them all, but I couldn't. To make matters worse, the local shelter was a kill shelter. I couldn't bear to send them there. So I found another way. I saw the pain in their eyes, the way they clung to hope, even when hope seemed so far away. Every weekend, on Saturdays and Sundays, I would gather as many of these little souls as I could and take them to a wealthier neighborhood. I stood in the parking lot of a big grocery store, hoping against hope. And every single time, I was lucky. People there opened their hearts and their homes to these animals. I trusted, prayed that they could afford to care for them, to feed them properly, to take them to the vet. I did it because I loved them, and they deserved a chance. Years later, when I became financially secure, I had a dog and a cat of my own, both rescued from the streets. I gave them everything they needed: proper food, vet visits, spaying and neutering, and all the love in the world. They became my family. Then, life brought me a gift: my husband. He's also an animal lover, and together, we found purpose in saving more animals. When he retired, we opened a small animal shelter. It wasn't easy. The expenses were overwhelming: food, vet care, and sheltering costs. The shelters were overflowing with desperate, lonely creatures, each one longing for love and safety. The worst part? Many of these shelters were kill shelters, meaning these poor souls were running out of time. We focused on animals in shelters that nobody wanted: the sick, the elderly, or those with behavioral problems. It was hard. Some weeks, we could barely keep up. I still remember the heartbreak of losing a cat we'd kept in the hospital for a week. Despite the $1,200 bill, she passed away the day after we brought her home. Another time, we found a compassionate vet who charged far less, and that made all the difference. We drove 40 miles each way to see them, but it was worth it because it meant we could save more lives. Puppies and kittens are adorable when they're small, but they grow up. If they aren't spayed or neutered, the cycle of abandoned, suffering animals continues. Adult animals, especially, face rejection. They're no longer cute, and their needs, like marking territory or pregnancies, often lead them back to the streets. I rescued countless pregnant cats, knowing the burden on their tiny bodies. Eventually, we had to close our shelter. The grief became too much. Every time an animal died, it shattered my heart. I couldn't bear it anymore. But God has a sense of humor. Even though we no longer ran the shelter, animals kept finding their way to us, often through family. With 13 grandchildren, many of them learning what it means to be responsible pet owners, pets would often end up with us when the children couldn't manage them. We loved them just the same. Please, I beg you, be a responsible pet owner. Spay and neuter your pets. If you can't care for them, find someone who can. Animals deserve love, not abandonment. Thank you for listening to my story. Have a happy day and hug your pets a little tighter today.